Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Gelvin Valley on Farming Simulator 15. Wonderful map created by Wild Wild Wes. You know, it's been a few episodes, or a little while, I say a few episodes. I've recorded a number of episodes on another map, and just looking at this, I seem to recall, didn't we have some rain? Yes, we did. So I think what I did last time is I fast forwarded us to get to some sun, and I believe we are there. So let's see if it'll let her rip. Getting cat here. Gonna change my camera orientation. Well, come on, Mr. Combine. Are you waiting for a written invitation? There we go. Maybe I accidentally took it off higher. But this is canola. I think I've indicated it was a mistake to plant it. Price just wasn't high enough. I mainly was trying to diversify from having just a single crop like I did the last time. You know, one thing I did do is I got rid of that big old rock that was kind of over on the side. I can't remember if that's something I did after the last episode that we had, but I see that that's missing. So let me get out of my combine. I need to go set up my, well, I have course play set up. Let's drive this puppy. Let's tell them which combine to get. There we go. I think I set this up so it's going to deliver the seed, the canola seed, to our storage. We have a whopping 774 bucks. And you know something? I want to check something. I remember in a previous episode we planted a bunch of trees. I'm anxious to see them grow. Ah, they're still little twigs. I just don't remember how quickly they grew. Farm Sim 15. I know in Farm Sim 17 the Seasons mod really slowed down the growth of trees by quite a bit, just to try to make it more realistic. But shoot, if it was 100% realistic, we'd never harvest a tree in game. And you know what? Let me just point something out to tell on myself. I don't know if I can show how I can show. Look at those wires up there. You can see the wires kind of coming off. I realize this looks terrible the way this is set up here. I can't get all my... It's doing something strange with that top bar. But see those wires kind of right in the upper middle of the screen. See those little tree branches sitting right there? That is a mistake I made on the Sky Swap mod, where, see, when I made that mod, I got textures of skies to use from any source I could find them. And a lot of times these sky textures had other obstacles in them. You know, some artist took the picture and they had, a tree or something kind of on the horizon, and I wanted nothing but the sky. So when I would modify it, I would try to scrub those extra little bits in it. Well, I see now that I screwed up on that particular texture. Probably, oh, I gotta go rescue my tractor. Probably, well, look at you here now, boys. You're finding the trees. Probably what I should do is mark what that texture is and then open it up and fix it. But the reality is I've published that. Well, no, you don't, Combine. Yes, you get out of there. Here, I'm kind of in its way now. Alright, you at least didn't climb the fence. So, anybody that... And what I basically did is I made the Sky Swap mod for 17, Farm Sim 17, and then brought it over to 15 to use over here. So apologize to anybody that used that mod or still uses it. Yeah, what can I say? It's got a blooper in there. Anybody could fix it, I guess. But let's see, are you dumping out of this? Yeah, you're. Oop! I can't drive straight. All right, I think I have out of the combine what I need to take. Let me remove the combine assignment. Drive course. Yeah, I think that's all I need to do at the moment. While our little combine keeps going. So what can I say? Like I say, I'm telling on myself. Where was angle? Am I looking at it the right angle? Oh, I hear the wind blow. Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's just, oh, that's irritating. You work so hard on a mod and try to do it right, and then you have a silly little blooper like that. Yeah, that's, now we gotta stare at it at least until this day is over. So we're heading towards the end of the day. Maybe eventually the sky will fade into the sunset and it'll hopefully look better. I guess nobody's perfect. But something I wanted to relate, this particular day, well, actually, shoot, it's past midnight as I record this, so I guess I'm on a new day. But the day before, I did something that I don't get to do very often. And anybody that has lasted this long hears this, I'd be curious your comments on it, because I gotta say, I'm ignorant. I don't know as much as I should about my own nation's laws and so forth, um, let alone other nations. But today, I went and did my quote civic duty, if you call it that, and attended jury duty. And anybody from America listening to this will know what that means. What I guess I don't know is what other nations have trials by jury, where there are rights given to citizens by whatever constitution or governing document that you have, to where you can get a trial and the decision is made by your peers or a sample of your peers. I was pulled at random from, I think, driving records, voting records. I'm not really sure what all they use, when they pull people at the particular county, that I live in. Um, but there was, this morning early, I had to show up at 8 o'clock, and it's mandatory that you show up to these. It's when I say civic duty, it's quite serious. If you don't show, even for jury duty, this isn't about a crime; it's someone else's crime. You're there to help make a decision on. But if you don't show up, they can arrest you for contempt of court. Now, I don't know what the penalties of all that is, but when you get summoned, you basically have to drop virtually everything to go to court and to be part of a jury selection process, if you will. Now, there's hardship type exemptions that they put in there, or you can defer like maybe up to even a year jury duty, if it just doesn't work at a particular time. So there is some allowance made by the law to be reasonable. Most of the time, I just take it and cross my fingers. A lot of times what happens is you'll get selected for jury duty, and they tell you the particular date where you have to show. But before you just go to the courthouse, the night before, there is a recording that you call into the courthouse to listen to, and they will tell you whether your juror number has been reached, or let's say there's like 500 jurors picked, and they may say we only need jurors 1 through 100, say. So if you're in that pool and your number is over 100, well, then you get out of it. You don't have to show up. Only the jurors 1 to 100 have to show up. So Well, most of the time, I haven't even had to go into court. Years and years ago, I went in there once and kind of went through the process, had to show, but I've been, I guess you could say, lucky ever since. I just haven't had to show up. I would call that number and, something maybe was settled out of court and they didn't need the jury for the trial, or it was waived, or I don't know what the reason would be. Whatever it was, it turns out, they didn't need us. Well, this time here, I call in the night before, as is typical, and nope, I had to show up the following day. So, show up this morning, I did, and, they don't have parking near the courthouse, so I had to hoof it and walk, but no big deal. You go in there, it's kind of like airline security. When you go to the airport to board a flight, they run you through all this rigmarole, send you through a metal. Uh, he's going to get full and, oh well, he'll be fine. So I had to go in the air, take my shoes off, my belt. Man alive, I guess wherever metal is going to make the thing beat, but eventually you get through that. They put you in this big old room up there. I think was there 80 of us, they said? Complete strangers. I didn't know a single person in that room, but these are all fellow residents of the county that I live in the state of Oregon, all showing up for the same thing. My job, my work is pretty flexible as a general rule, and this time of year in particular. So, and being self-employed, you tend to have more flexibility to be able to take time away. But it's a real hardship to some people, that maybe work on a particular work crew and they're hourly and they gotta show up to in there, and by law your employer has to allow you to go, attend a jury duty, and they can't just remove your job. Some employers are kind enough to pay you while you're away. Most you simply got to report vacation. That's what I did. I mean, I just took vacation this morning, go do jury duty. Um, and and here's the funny thing. I was talking to someone in our office after it. Our government makes laws that mandate what they call a minimum wage. You aren't allowed to pay someone less. Well, when the government also realizes that when they ask its citizens to be part of jury duty, employers aren't mandated that they have to pay their employees. They don't have to, because obviously you're not working at your employer, so they don't pay you. I think some states require it, ours doesn't. Um, so the state, in all of its wisdom, the same state that mandates minimum levels of pay, when it comes to a jury trial, they do pay jurors, but it's a whopping $10 a day. I mean, you can't even hardly get a cheeseburger for $10 anymore. Oh, we better help our tractor get out the door here, because he's going to start climbing stuff if we don't. But it's just ludicrous, really. And, someone was asking about that, mentioning that he had lost wages, and the guy that was in there kind of bringing us all in said, oh, yeah, well, thank you for your question, glad you asked, then went on to explain how cheap the state is in what they pay people to be on juries and uphold justice. And, I realize this is our civic duty. It's part of maintaining our rights. Maybe we should be willing to do it for free. I don't know. I'm just saying it's interesting. They tell all of us employers that we need to pay a certain amount per hour, and then they totally ignore it when you go work for the government in the capacity of a juror, and they send you away with $10 a day. I just waived it. I said, put it in the pool. They had some pool that you could put it into that would provide things, like coffee and that kind of stuff for jurors. So I said, forget it. I'll be fine without the $10. I think if you were a juror for more than 2 days, they bumped the pay to, $25 a day. Hardly enough even for a meal on the town anymore. It feels like, um, for yourself, let alone if you have someone with you. But it is what it is. I guess we were there to do our civic duty. And so, kind of the first part of the day, there was a whole lot of hurry up and wait, sit there. They had us fill out, these questionnaires. I think to get a picture of kind of what our occupation was, what our level of education, what some of our hobbies and interests were, just to get a flavor of the person, because there was 3 court trials, I think, going on in the building that particular day, and the attorneys and the judge, I guess, they read, what we put on there, and it isn't just those things, education. Some of it is too, have you ever been convicted of a crime, or a family member been a victim, or have you been a victim of a crime? I think these give perspective to who they're going to have sit on these juries. And if you're not able to behave yourself impartially, well, then you're not going to get put on the jury. So, and that questioning process continued. They had us in a room for a while. We filled those out. We watched a video presentation of propounding the how awesome juries are. And they told us, and I don't know if this is accurate, they said the U.S. is apparently one of the few countries that has a jury system. I don't know if that's accurate. Like I said, I'm ignorant. Maybe some of you that are from other nations that listen to this, you could inform me on that. I do really believe in its importance. The trouble is, it's always a nuisance. It always seems to come at the wrong time when you got to go do it. But in principle, I don't think you'll find an American that would disagree with it. I'm still in the middle of a book written, who was it, by Solzhenitsyn. It's called The Gulag Archipelago. It talks about what happened in communist Russia after the revolution back in the early 1900s when they took over from the Tsars. And there was no trial by jury. There was no criminal law even. There were these tribunals, there was these groups that held trials, and it was a lot of political revenge, and it was taking out your enemies, it was making things up on the fly. No sane person wants to be in a system, where judge, jury, and executioner and the lawmaker are all in the same person. That's way too much power. And as this book documents, it was abused. It was used on political opponents, used as a mode of terror in the populace to maintain control. Just horrible things, that he's putting in there that took place, all in the name of revolution, in the name of the people, whatever that means, without giving the people some control. So it really is an important right, and important to have the citizenry involved. I would far rather have people from the streets, I don't care if they're homeless, I would sooner rather have them decide my case if I ever was in court than a politician or somebody in power in some ways. Much rather have a jury of my peers. And I think by peers it just means fellow Americans. It doesn't mean people exactly like you. I'm an accountant. I don't think that means if I get in trouble in the accounting world that I'm going to have a jury of other accountants. I don't think it works quite that way. It just means fellow citizens from all walks of life. And I think you got to be 18 and older. If you're over 70, I think they let you off the hook. But you see people from all walks of life in there. I mean, the old, there was young, some that looked like they were barely 18. I'm somewhere in the middle. Male, female, tall, short, fat, thin, different occupations, all these different things. It really was an interesting cross-section of people, of just different backgrounds. And so hopefully from the ad you get a pool of people that are able to decide guilt or innocence in a case. And so there was, like I say, 3 cases. Occasionally, one of the court, oh, what do they call them? I don't even know the terminology. We'll just say a court officer, if you will. He looked kind of like secretary to the judge. I don't know. He was sitting up there kind of with the judge a little bit off to the side. I think he kind of was just admin for the proceedings. He came, he called off juror numbers. My number was called and we got hauled in there. There was 18 of us. And so they sit us down kind of in the jury box, if you will. And there we get a lecture kind of from the judge as to what our role is. We get educated on the standard or burden of proof, if you will. This particular case was a criminal case, and as opposed to a civil case. A civil case, as I understand it, is just between like individual to individual. Maybe one person sues another, or one company has something on another, and they go to court together. And the penalty tends to be monetary in nature, or you're compelled to do some act, maybe to fulfill your contract or whatever. A criminal case, on the other hand, is the plaintiff, I believe, is always the state. And the penalty isn't monetary. Well, maybe there's some fines, but it also can involve loss of liberty. And I really don't know where all trial by jury is taken up, but anytime it involves loss of liberty, meaning, if there's going to jail or prison, or in some areas, where they have capital punishment, when you're making a decision like that, it's especially handled by a jury. And the burden of proof is much higher than it is in a civil case. It needs to be beyond a reasonable doubt. So this particular case, it involved a woman who was accused of committing assault. And so after the judge gave some preliminary instructions, got us kind of on the record, if you will. Come on, the combine's over here. Right. Come on, dude. Well, it's trying to drive behind the combine. Maybe it'll eventually get there. It quits horsing around. Well, so what they were trying to do was pick a jury. And, oh, how great. Just before it hits this tree, it fills up. So the defense attorney went first, introduced himself, and asked sometimes individual members of the jury, or potential jury, questions, to gauge what our biases were, if you will. And, it's interesting, some of the things they encouraged us on, so much of the time as we read news reports or that kind of thing, sometimes it's frustrating because you'll see people operating off of feelings and emotion and whatever their bias is, rather than facts and things that are like hard data, evidence. So again and again, they were encouraging the potential jurors, that when you decide this case, it needs to be based on evidence. Not your bias, not your feelings. It needs to be on the basis of what's presented as evidence, by the attorneys involved. So I think the attorneys, as they were asking us questions, they wanted to gauge maybe what kind of biases we had. Maybe they had some questions about a particular item that we wrote down on our information cards. Whatever, some of them were asking, like one of them, he asked a question: do you believe that where there is smoke, there is fire? And I think we all know what that means, that euphemism, that cliche or whatever. And basically he was saying, the parallel to a court situation is, do you believe someone is guilty just because they've been arrested and a police report's been filed on them? Well, of course, all of us said, well, no. In that case, I mean, you need to go through a trial. You're innocent until presumed guilty. Um, he, some of these attorneys, I think some of this is some of the tricks they pull to try to get a jury on their side. One of the things he said, the defense attorney, he said, my client, and he pointed to her, he said, the court, or the trial hasn't happened yet. Is she guilty or is she innocent? Well, we all had to say innocent, right? Because she's innocent until proven guilty. But I kind of think the reason he did that is he wanted to condition people to say innocent. And of course, the plaintiff's attorney, would try the same thing. They're coming at it at a different angle. But at the end of the day, I think with both attorneys having opportunity to turn over the rocks or whatever and see what they have in the jury pool, it kind of hopefully gives a good opportunity to find 6 individuals that will be fair and impartial, in terms of hearing the case. Now, this particular lady, like I say, was accused of assault, and I didn't end up getting picked for the jury. I can't even hardly remember what kind of questions I was asked. It really wasn't much. They tended to ask it more as a group so we could kind of chime in. And, like any time you're with any group of people, some people are more talkative than others. I tend to be kind of quiet, these videos notwithstanding. It's it takes a piece of me to make a YouTube video because, I'm basically an introverted person, so to sit here and talk the entire time isn't always in my comfort zone. So I was fairly quiet, but I did comment on a couple things in this. Well, like I mentioned earlier, and this is kind of amusing, you see a cross section and from all walks of life. Well, I was sitting right beside this elderly gentleman. I say elderly. I think he was under 70, probably was in his upper 60s if I had to guess. Well, when we were in the big room and, we were receiving instructions before we were pulled into the separate courtroom for jury selection, he was constantly telling the guy, speak up, just hollering. Well, he was sitting clear off in some corners like, dude, if you can't hear, how come you aren't sitting in the front row? Finally, someone basically told him to move his rear end over to a different seat so he could actually hear rather than just constantly yelling at the guy. I say yelling. Assertively requesting, shall we say, that he speak louder. But he also was one of these guys who I think loved to hear the sound of his own voice in a group of people. He was one of those that commented on virtually everything that the attorney said, even though sometimes all the attorney said, raise your hand if you agree with this or not. Well, he had to audibly say something, and he would also add additional commentary. He answered questions that were never asked. It was just kind of funny. And maybe what it could be sometimes too is, I work in a job where I see people all the time. I interact with them, whether it's clients or my coworkers, and like I say, I'm introverted anyways. He probably was an extroverted individual, and they need to be around people. And so I kind of think he was retired. He was a truck driver. So now that he was in a room full of people, he probably was like, whoopee, I'm taking advantage of being, in contact with all these people, and I'm going to talk. And he did. You go all the way from that and just the different experiences of people in the room. Some people had crimes done to them. Some had crimes in their family. Someone had a brother who had committed a crime. And, so the judge and the attorneys are all just taking this in to see who is going to be a fair and impartial juror for the particular case. There was 18 of us, I think, in the room, and eventually they called us all back in. They selected 6 of them, and I wasn't one of the 6. So the rest of us were let go. So I think the whole process took about 4 hours. I was back in the office just before noon, ready to start my work day. So, and in the selection system, and at least in our area, you won't have to do it again for at least 2 years. So it doesn't happen very often. And even 2 years, usually it's way longer than that, that you would ever get called up. Oh, look at that. I love driving right through those cars. So anyway, that was some of my excitement for the day. It was interesting to be reminded of these things, and I gotta say, I go to work every day, do whatever I do, living life like all of us do, and I'm sure I'm not alone. I don't even think about this. But there was, I looked up this woman's case later, and as it turns out, she was acquitted. So the jury that was selected didn't feel the state provided enough evidence that she had committed assault, so she was acquitted. And hopefully that's the best possible outcome that could be had. And for that woman, if she genuinely didn't do it, and that's what the jury said, well, my goodness, you really hope that you get a good group of people that are going to carefully weigh your case. I mean, you're beholden to them. You could end up in jail or fines, and so your neck is on the line, and you're thankful to have a group of people that will hear you out and give you your day in court. And it really is an important right, and to be too callous, and it's like, oh my goodness, now I gotta go do jury duty, and I got all these other things I need to do. It's like, yes, we're all busy, but boy, we can't be so busy that we forsake our very bedrock rights of that are important to us, in this country or in others. It seems like it's so easy for rights to atrophy, to be taken away, to be cast aside as unimportant when it doesn't affect me. But then all of a sudden one day when you wake up and you find your country's foundation shaken, well, yeah, that's when maybe you wish more would have been done with it. So anyway, I don't want to delve off into politics. It just kind of was a sober day to remind me of some cherished rights that we have in our nation, and I appreciate that reminder, even if I didn't get to fully participate in the process. Well, I'm looking at the clock, and lo and behold, I am at the end of the half hour. Don't know where the time goes, but she goes. So I think I'm gonna call the episode there. Thank you so much for watching. Look at my cash. We started with money, we ended without. So we'll let this guy get himself back to the field, and we'll call the episode here. Thanks again. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye for now.